I'm going to make a prediction right now based on the information before me. This prediction may be absolutely incorrect. Many people may agree, may disagree. And after the election, people might say, see, Tim was wrong. But based on the information I have in front of me, I will say the polls are wrong. And they are way wrong, much more wrong than they were in 2016. The forecasters are wrong. And I believe right now, based on what I'm seeing, Trump is going to win. Not by a whole lot, but perhaps a narrow victory. Now, already Democrats are fighting to change rules in key battleground states. Donald Trump is suing back to stop some of these changes. And so there's a lot of fighting going on. And I don't know what the results of these legal battles will be and how this will affect the election. It may be that the polls are actually very wrong, but Democrats get some rule changes that result in a Joe Biden win. Or it could be that the polls are right, but Donald Trump wins some legal victories and he ends up becoming president. There are a lot of scenarios to factor in. But right now, the electoral map is very weird. And that comes from the Washington Post. You see, the forecasters, the pollsters, I believe, are missing a crucial voter block. Trump's newly registered voters. I don't think they're accounting for this. And many people are starting to take notice. Hey, wait a minute. If these polls are based off of assumptions about how the Democrat and Republican Party have typically handled things, then maybe you're missing the fact that Republicans have been particularly active in this election cycle. When was the last time you saw a right-wing protest? You might actually say, well, I mean, technically there have been massive Trump rallies and Blue Lives Matter rallies across the country. Yes. And in my long career, about a decade actually, maybe that's not really that long, covering civil unrest, I never see the right get out and get active. The right is not known for holding rallies, staging voter registration drives or things like that, but they are now. And now we're seeing in many key battlegrounds, the Republicans are closing the gap in voter registration, particularly in Pennsylvania, where it's like 2-1. If the pollsters aren't factoring this in, then the polls are off and their predictions are off. And let me ask you, have you ever thought how weird it is that the forecasters are giving Biden better odds than Vegas? I mean, betting odds in general. Like if you go to some of these betting websites, they don't give Trump that good of a chance to win. They give Trump around a 40%. Yet when you look at 538, they're like 13%. Maybe it's because the betting odds are based off of more anecdotal and emotional decision making. How are people acting? What is the news showing us? What are we seeing in terms of Halloween mask sales? As opposed to, we called 1,000 people and tried to figure out what made the most sense. No, I think the polls are wrong. The Democrats are underrating Trump's secret weapon, which is not the shy Trump voter. It's voter registration. They didn't see this coming. How? I think they're wrong. I think they're wrong. But I got to be fair. I do think that the shy Trump voter, the secret Trump voter, plays a serious role in this. And this election cycle's secret Trump voter, in fact, will be newly registered individuals, not people scared to speak up. Now, let me preface that. I believe Trump voters, many of them are scared to speak up. I can tell you this right now. There are people close to me in my life who have flipped from lifelong Democrat to Republican for a variety of reasons, notably Nancy Pelosi and the riots. And they are terrified to speak out about this. And there are people in my life who are typically apolitical who are going to vote for Biden. But seeing people I know say straight up, not a Democrat anymore, I think there's going to be a wave of secret Trump voters who will never tell anyone. And thus, the polls are wrong and Trump will win. But let me show you the data that I have to back this up. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. There's a P.O. box if you want to send me stuff. But the best thing you can do is share this video. Maybe informative to people on either side of the aisle to maybe give them perspective on what may happen come election night. If you are a Democrat and you're following this mainstream media, you're probably being fed bad information and bad polls. And I'm going to show you the research. And if you're a Republican, you probably want to know that you are not on a path to crushing defeat. Now, to be fair, most Trump supporters are very confident they're going to win. But to be fair, Democrats are also very confident they're going to win as well. We won't know for sure. And let me just say, I can show you this data, which in my opinion shows why Trump is going to win. But then I'll show you some of the things that may result in Trump losing. The rule changes. They're going to be counting ballots well after Election Day. So anyway, I digress. If you think I do a good job and you think this information is important, please share this video and also hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let's get into this story from the Washington Post. The electoral map is very weird right now. Is South Carolina really closer than Michigan? The reason why I'm showing you this story is because the polls are currently confusing many people when they're like, how is it that Trump is doing, like, South Carolina is a closer race than Michigan, as these things are very strange. Could it be that the polls are wrong? Or it could be that the polls are right, I suppose. But either way, people are confused. Check this out. From the Washington Post, Philip Bump writes, "You'll be unsurprised to learn that according to a poll released Friday by the New York Times, that Trump is leading in Montana. You might be surprised, though, to learn the margin of Trump's lead is only 7 points, which, if that margin were to hold until Election Day, would represent a 13-point swing away from Trump relative to his 2016 support." I gotta stop right there. Do you expect me to believe that that Montana is swinging Biden by 13 points? Think about it for 2 seconds. Use your rational mind. I tell you this, it is entirely possible. Trump is the worst candidate we've ever seen, and thus Montana might turn blue. Or okay, I mean, a 7-point lead still suggests that Trump wins Montana, but a 13-point swing towards the Democrats? Is Trump really that bad? I'm sorry, I don't believe it. No amount of negative press would convince me that Trump has lost 13 points in Montana. They say, more remarkably, that's as narrow a race as the pollsters measured in both Michigan and Wisconsin, states Trump won by tiny margins 4 years ago. In Michigan, the Times Standard poll had Biden up 8 points. In Wisconsin, he was up 10. You're trying to tell me that in a Rust Belt swing state, the race is as close as Montana? I'm sorry, man. I just don't buy it. I think this is strong evidence that the polls are completely out of whack. And I don't know who the Democrats are polling, but I'll tell you this. The conspiracy theory from the Trump supporters is that the media is lying to us to try to demoralize Trump supporters and convince them not to vote. I don't know if that's true, but I'll tell you this. There's no real metric there to judge on whether or not things will be different in terms of demoralization. Some say that Hillary Clinton's voters didn't come out because they were convinced she was going to win. And thus, this time around, when they're actually scared Trump will win, they'll come out and vote and Trump will be crushed. Maybe. Or maybe it's true that Trump voters were demoralized by bad polls, thinking they'd never win, and some didn't go out and vote. Maybe that's true as well. So it seems like a moot point. But let's take a look at the data. He goes on to say this is one poll, of course. By now, you're likely savvy enough to know that it's generally more useful to consider polling averages than individual polls. We took the most recent averages in each state as compiled by 538 and ordered the states by current polling margin. The results are striking. The closest race in the averages is Texas. Are you out of your mind? Look, I'll tell you this. Maybe the world has gone nuts and everything's changing and Trump has changed the face of this country. And Texas, for the first time in 44 years, will swing Democrat. Maybe. They've been talking about it for a long time. I mean, Ted Cruz, Beto O'Rourke, that was a close race. I'm going to bet on the simple solution. I mean, Texas is going to go red. Already in early voting, we can look at Target Early from Target Smart. Republicans have a strong lead of about 12.4 points in terms of early voting and absentee. Democrats are predicted to lead in early voting. But again, in Texas, early voting favors Republicans. Why would I believe a poll telling me Texas is in play? Listen, maybe things have changed dramatically, or maybe the polls are completely broken. You know why? Viewership habits have changed. Media habits have changed. Are the pollsters accurately tracking how people consume information? Who is likely to vote? Do they even know who a likely voter is at this point? Maybe not. Looking at this, it's kind of hilarious to see that Iowa is a closer race than Michigan or Ohio even. I think that's absurd. He says the state that's closest at the moment is Texas. If Joe Biden wins Texas, it's over. But it doesn't get less weird. Georgia, Iowa, and Ohio, which Trump won in 2016 by 5, 9, and 8 points respectively, are the next three closest states. What's more, Biden leads in the first two. Notice where Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin land. In 2016, Trump's narrow wins in those three states earned him the presidency. Now Biden leads by at least 6 points in each. Arizona is closer than any of those three states. Alaska is closer. Stop yourself. One poll change, and I would consider it. But showing me all of these states Trump won by respectable amounts have just flipped magically, and Texas, of all places, is going blue, and I'm going to say, all right, you know what? I just don't believe anymore. Forgive me if I don't believe you. Maybe you're right. Maybe the data is true. The simple solution is the pollsters made mistakes by a point or two last time around, and those mistakes have only gotten worse. When they failed last time, they probably said, we got to make some changes to figure out what we got wrong, and they've only broken everything. If your predictions were completely broken last time around, you're probably going to need a couple goes at it in order to figure out what you got wrong. But I'll tell you this, there's a really funny article that came out of Columbia. I don't have it pulled up. Check it out. Someone sent it to me, where they mentioned that in 538's polling statistics, their forecasts, there's a model they have where Trump wins California. They include that in their modeling as to why Trump might win or lose. Okay, I'm sorry. That's ridiculous. Trump is not going to win California. I know a lot of people are probably saying, Tim, California is going to... No, Trump's not winning California. California will be blue. Illinois will be blue. Now, to be fair, on the 538 website, they're interactive, they don't give you an option to make California red. But apparently they included that because they wanted to have a wide margin of error. But anyway, the point is, how could it be that all of these states that should be red are really close? Doesn't seem to make sense. He goes on to say, we highlighted particularly odd stretch of margins. South Carolina is closer than Michigan. Michigan is closer than Montana. Nebraska is closer than Minnesota. What is happening here? We must, of course, note that polling a bit over a week before 2016 showed Trump trailing in key states by fairly wide margins. All of those states that are narrower than Arizona are within about 3 points. He goes on to say we made a tool allowing readers to see how errors in the polls underestimating the number of Trump voters who turn out would affect the national results. Important point. At the moment, if the polls in every state were wrong in the exact same ways they were in 2016, Biden still wins the presidency with over 300 electoral votes. If the polls are off to the same degree as 2016, but in the other direction, Biden's margin is far bigger. Please keep patting yourselves on the back thinking that you're going to win. And let me show you this map. They say, if the poll shift is the same as 2016, then Joe Biden will win the presidency with 357 electoral votes to Trump's 181. Oh, no. If the polls are underestimating to the same degree, it's over. That suggests it's all over, doesn't it? Let me do a little math for you. See, they got a slider bar. I love how they only say it could go in Biden's favor. All right, sure. If we go into a reverse of 2016, Joe Biden wins with 407 votes. But how about we do this? How about we say there is Trump is underestimated by just 7.5 points. That's a big polling error, to mind you. But let's say the polls underestimate Trump by 7.5 points. If the polls reflect the pattern above, Donald Trump would be reelected with 295 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 243. 7.5 is the bare minimum, they say, in a polling shift that would result in a Trump reelection. We could theoretically go higher and say they underestimate Trump by 10 points and then Trump wins 321 electoral votes. I'd like to bring you now to a story. Trafalgar chief pollster predicts Trump victory. Polls predominantly missing the hidden vote. As many of you may be aware, Trafalgar Group predicted Trump's win. Well, sort of. Trafalgar Group's polling in 2016 showed Trump leading in key battleground states, including Pennsylvania and Michigan, when almost all other pollsters had Trump trailing Hillary Clinton. Trump ended up winning both of those states and Wisconsin, becoming the first GOP presidential nominee to do so in decades. I see the president winning with a minimum of high 270s and possibly going up significantly higher based on just how big the undercurrent is. Cahaley said, referring to Electoral College votes. A candidate needs 270 electoral votes to win the White House. What we've noticed that these polls are predominantly missing the hidden Trump vote. There is a clear feeling among conservatives and people that are for the president. They're not interested in sharing their opinions readily. These people are more hesitant to participate in polls. So if you're not compensating for this, you're not going to get honest answers. And you may say, Tim, that's just one guy's opinion. But these are things I've already shown you. And I want to highlight it now because I'm going to counter. Well, I'm going to show you. What did I just say? Washington Post says if they underestimate Trump by 7.5%, then that's it. Trump wins, right? According to Cloud Research, several PhDs who did a bunch of this, we've got, 4 PhDs and an MS have done research where they found 10.1% of Trump supporters said they were likely to be untruthful on phone surveys, double the number of Biden supporters, which at 5.1. Perhaps they negate each other. So let's put it this way. Let's say in these polls, there is a 10-point swing in favor of Donald Trump. 10% of the people polled say they would rather vote for Biden when they really would want to vote for Trump. Well, then, that's well above 7, isn't it? To be fair, I guess for some reason, half of Biden supporters would claim they're going to vote for Trump for some reason, but that doesn't seem to make sense to me. But it could be, in which case Trump is just shy of that victory. So maybe Trump does lose. But I got to be honest, I think it's bigger than that. And I think Trafalgar is right. That part is just my personal opinion. The rest is my analysis, which also could be absolutely wrong. The polls could be spot on. Trump might get crushed. I don't know for sure. But I kind of feel like there are secret Trump voters. This research seems to suggest it. And even if Trump only gets 7%, 7.5, he still wins. But this is not the absolute secret weapon I've been talking about. It doesn't matter in the end. It doesn't matter if there are secret Trump voters or not. The reality is Trump sees reason for hope in voter signups that polls may miss. My friends, the polls aren't wrong because of secret Trump voters who are lying. Let me show you this first. We have this from 538. Biden is favored to win 87 in 100. Sure. 538 also wrote, Trump supporters aren't shy, but polls could still be missing some of them. They go on to say it's a theory that won't die. It goes something like this. For some unknown segment of President Trump's support is too shy to admit they back him, usually offered as an explanation for why Trump's poll numbers weren't better in 2016 or why they're not better now. The idea hinges on Trump being such a controversial candidate that it's not socially desirable to say you support him. And as such, there's a lot of hidden Trump support not captured by the polls. Only there's scant evidence of this. In fact, there's some evidence against the shy Trump theory. Nate Silver of 538 once tweeted, Biden's supporters are the shy ones. They're not running around with flags, having parades and screaming, go Biden. In which case, the real silent majority is the Democrats. Okay, maybe he's right. Maybe there are no shy Trump voters. Maybe that's true. I mean, the research says there is. Another pollster says there is. And 538 says there isn't. So ultimately, you decide. But here's the real issue. Registrations. If the pollsters are thinking it's the same game as 2016, they are wrong. Now, I know many of them may say that we understand there will be shifts in the dynamics of this election cycle, but can they accurately predict them? Bloomberg reports President Trump and his campaign have cited increased Republican voter registrations as a sign he still has a viable path to re-election, despite public polls showing him headed for a loss. As of this week, across 8 battleground states, Republicans have registered about 179,000 more voters than Democrats since 2016, including big net gains in 2 states that could decide the election, Florida and Pennsylvania. After the 2016 election, famously decided by about 88,000 votes in 3 Midwestern states, the margin could prove significant on election night. Democrat Joe Biden holds a lead of roughly 8 points on average in national polls. But Trump and his allies consider voter registration one of the indications that public opinion surveys are once again failing to fully capture the president's support. What Trump has called a silent majority and what some pollsters call shy Trump voters. These are not shy Trump voters. This is a guy sitting in his house, normally doesn't vote, doesn't care all that much. Someone knocked on his door for once and said, hey, let's have a conversation. How would you like to register to vote? And the guy said, okay. This is Republicans holding voter registration drives, saying go register and targeting key areas that will result in more Republicans registering than Democrats. We also have party affiliation changing. Many people who once said they were Democrat now say they're independent. Some say they're Republicans. Walk away is a serious issue. If the pollsters are calling up suburban Chicago that is historically Democrat and saying the mid-40s suburban housewife with kids who are about to go to college or whatever or graduating high school is typically, our Democrat voter, and they call her and they ask her and she says, oh, Democrat for sure. And they use that as the basis for everything around them in these key areas, they'd probably get things wrong. They're going to be underestimating people. They're going to be estimating those. Look, they're underestimating those who are scared of the riots. They're underestimating those who are scared of cancel culture. And they're underestimating the new registrations. Also, they're underestimating probably the black voter. For this, I think the polls are wrong. And I got to be honest. Maybe it's just wishful thinking. For real. It's going to be funny come, a month after Election Day or whatever, whenever they decide, and Joe Biden wins, and then people are like, look what Tim thought. He was wrong. Sure. I'm making my case based on incomplete information. Here's what I have before me. I have a view that I think the polls are wrong, but to be honest, it would be historically inept. These organizations would be displaying historic ineptitude if it turned out these polls were broken to this degree. Stranger things have happened. And we're looking at a dramatic shift in all of our expectations. I mean, TV viewership is actually up. Kind of crazy, right? Viewership across the board. COVID, we don't know how this is affecting everything. COVID may seriously change the game. The pollsters could not predict it. So you want to tell me why the polls might, you want me to tell you why the polls might be wrong? They failed to predict COVID. They have no idea how COVID impacts anybody. And maybe there are now a lot of Democrats who knew the economy was good but hated Trump and are now like, I just want it back. Because Trump's approval rating on the economy is very, very high. But let me show you some stuff. Let me show you. It might not be about anything having to do with polls. In Pennsylvania, Supreme Court says ballots can't be rejected based on signature comparisons. The court ruling backed up a policy issued by the state election office earlier this year. That means if a mail-in ballot comes in, and they look at it and say that signature does not match that signature, you're good. That means someone could take a ballot, forge it, and you're good. They can't reject it based on signature comparisons. They have just ended, the Democrats did. Let me read a little bit. They ruled Friday. The ruling is a defeat for President Trump's campaign and Republicans who challenged the decision by Pennsylvania's election officials, arguing that efforts to match signatures on ballots on voter rolls were necessary to prevent fraud. There it is, out the window. So will Trump's voter registration, a fair play move, be enough to Democrats removing voter integrity? Maybe not. Maybe it won't be enough. And maybe that's why, in the end, Biden may win Pennsylvania. But take a look at the Hill. Pennsylvania says half of requested mail-in ballots have already been cast. What this says to me is that perhaps we are not going to see as big as historic a voter turnout as many people expect. Gallup research, that enthusiasm for this election is normal. That was surprising to me. And with this massive early voting turnout, it looks like it's going to be historic. Or it could just be early voter turnout. Like, put it this way. Traditionally, people go out and vote on Election Day, right? You want to take one day off work. It's kind of easy. You know when you're going to vote. 65 million Democrats go and vote, mostly on the same day. Many early, many by mail. Now with COVID, they're saying go vote early. The same 65 million go and vote, but many of them vote early. That's it? Okay. Then the numbers may be the same, in which case that is seriously bad news for Democrats. Half of requested mail-in ballots have already been cast. That's a lot of ballots. I mean, they're talking about 100 million across the country, I guess. So we're looking at more than half of Pennsylvania's actual votes. As of right now, that actually looks kind of bad for Republicans because early voter and absentee voter returns outnumber Republicans by like 40 points. But the point I'm trying to make is that Democrats need massive voter turnout in order to win. It may actually not be massive. And the other thing is, how many Democrats are actually going to vote for Trump this time around? Seriously. Last time around, about 9 million Obama voters voted for Donald Trump. Perhaps there are people who are independent, left-leaning, Democrat-leaning, have decided to vote for Donald Trump. Just because they're voting in larger numbers does not mean the Democrats are going to win. And I'll tell you why I think Pennsylvania is going to Trump. Because, let me show you this. Over on Google. Take a look. Can I change my vote? Search term. And on October 24th, it peaked to 100, with Pennsylvania being the fourth highest interested subregion. I wonder, what could Joe Biden have said that would make people of Pennsylvania search this? Now, maybe people in Pennsylvania searched it because of something Trump said, sure. But Joe Biden said he was going to end the oil industry. And of course, I'm pretty sure people in Pennsylvania, if they want to change their vote, it's because they don't want to vote for Joe Biden because he's going to take their jobs away. Let me tell you this. We can all make predictions every day, and I'm gonna. I think Trump is going to win as of right now, but man, it's hard to know for sure. Youth vote seems to be turning out. We don't know for sure. We don't. So by all means, in a month or two, take this video and say, look, Tim made a prediction. He got it wrong. Of course I did. Here's what I see. Here's what I think is going to happen based on the information before me. I am but one person looking through a keyhole at all of this information, and I can't see everything. That's my assessment. Perhaps it's my bias. I'm going to be voting for Trump, so of course I want him to win. Consider that as well. And then come, November 10th, we'll figure out who's suing who. And then come January 20th, we probably still won't even know who our president is. So I guess we'll just hang out and see what happens. But I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. It is my main channel, and I will. I'm sorry. It is not my. It's a different channel, and I will see you all then.